Thank you for joining us for this Codefresh live event, and welcome to our May 1st, 2019 new features launch. We've been hard at work on enhancements to the Codefresh CICD platform, and to tell you all about it, I will go ahead and hand this over to Dan Garfield.
Perfect. Thank you, Taryn. Joining me today, so to introduce myself, my name is Dan Garfield. I'm the Chief Technology Evangelist for Codefresh. I'm also a Google Developer Expert and a member of the Forbes Technology Council. This is a culmination of hundreds of developer hours. And the things that we're going to be talking about today and showing you are things that we've been testing and we've actually had really good results with in terms of how they've impacted people's ability to get up and running with CI/CD and getting onboarded into this faster mode of development. Joining me today is Kostas, who is one of our, who is a developer advocate for Codefresh. Kostas, I'm going to unmute you and ask you to start your video. Kostas does a lot of our blog posts and also maintains all of our documentation. And if you haven't read any of his blog posts, please check them out. They're at codefresh.io/blog. Kostas, any other comment about yourself?
I'm originally a developer, but at the moment I'm enjoying unit tests, pipelines, automation, and anything that has to do with CI and CD. That's my big love.
Perfect. So today, let's kick off. We're going to, if you're not familiar with Codefresh already, I think most of you are. We started off really focused as a Docker-based CI/CD solution, and we've built a lot of tooling for Kubernetes and what we would call the cloud-native world. Of course, one of our big differentiators in Codefresh, and we think that this is really the future way of building pipelines, is that each step is actually its own container. So there's a big impact. And we already have more than 20,000 users. We're growing very quickly. We really launched about 2.5 years ago, and we're seeing a lot of adoption both among the enterprise, among startups, among fast growth, mid-sized companies. So really it runs the gamut. The commonality is that these are teams that want to develop faster, they want to deploy faster, and they want to use the next generation tools like containers, Kubernetes, Helm, serverless, whatever, all those wonderful things. So today's agenda, we're going to be going through a number of different things and changes that we've made in the Codefresh platform that involve new projects, new pipeline views, and their impacts on future development as well as existing customers, existing people using the platform. So first off, let's talk about the pipeline projects. This is a new top-level concept that we have. You'll notice most of you will have this in your Codefresh account today. It's available to all new accounts, and for existing accounts, most migration has already been completed, but there is some migration still to go. If you haven't seen it yet, you will soon. This project concept is something that we worked on for a long time because we found that when people started building their pipelines, without a project for them to tether to, they could easily become lost and confused about what a pipeline was doing and what context it was operating in. So what we've done now is we've created this project concept, and a project can contain multiple pipelines. It can have secrets and variables that are specific to that project. It can have different team members that are specific to that project. There are permissions that go along with that project, and it can it can span resources, pipelines, triggers that all fit within a single project. And the project doesn't have any special naming convention. It's really meant to represent the way that you work. So if you have a development team that's cross-functional, but you want to work on a project together, you can name it after the application you're building or the team that's working on it, the department, maybe it's a location. It's really meant to help you reflect the real sort of sneaker net of your team and way of working within the context of your CI/CD pipelines in Codefresh. And when we tested this concept along with the other ones that we're going to show you today, we found a dramatic improvement in how quickly people were actually able to get pipelines successfully built and running, as well as how successful they were with those pipelines. So it made a really dramatic impact in our testing, and so now we're rolling it out to everyone, and so far the feedback has been very positive. So to give you a demo of this, Kostas, why don't you show us how project creation looks?
Yes, so today we have lots of demos, so let's pray all to the demo gods, but creating a project is one of the most simple ones, just to get started. So this is the Codefresh UI. If you have never seen it before, it has everything you want in one single place, and this is the new projects area. The repositories view, if you're an existing customer, is still there, and we're going also to talk about existing customers and how they are affected, but for the moment, we need to make sure that both projects and repositories are available. So if I go to the projects view, I can click on a button that says create project. I can name it. As Dan said, it can be anything I want. So maybe my team, my location, or something else. Optionally, you can add some project tags. Project tags can be used both for categorization of projects, but also it's a way to gain access control. So we have some more advanced infrastructure where you can define access on pipelines and projects depending on tags. You can assign teams to tags, teams to pipelines, and define exactly which tags they are going to be visible for them. For the moment, I'm going to leave this empty. I'm also going to choose an icon. I'm going to click create, and that's it. That's the first demo. I now have a project, and I can start create pipelines on them, on the project, as we will see. So the next thing we're going to talk is a new pipeline view, which is loved by developers. Now, if you have worked with teams that have both developers and operators, you will know about the different mindset these teams are having. Operators love their scripts, their terminal, their CLI, but developers love programming with high-level languages and having an integrated development environment. So far, we think that operators are happy with Codefresh because we include the Codefresh CLI, which is completely self-contained. It operates and has all access to the capabilities that are also present in the UI. So if you are an operator and you want to work with Codefresh, it's very easy to just download it. It's a single executable and start managing your pipelines or from command line. So operators are happy. But we also want to give Codefresh happiness to developers, and we know that developers love IDEs. They want a single view of everything, where there is an editor in the middle, where they're editing something inside the project, and on the left, usually you have a tree structure where you can see your files and what you want to edit. And on the right, you have some additional windows like outlines or properties or something like this. And all modern integrated development environments work in a similar manner. So we said, let's do the same thing in Codefresh and offer to developers the same capability and flexibility they have with IDEs. And instead of trying to have something fancy, let's create an IDE for pipelines, which is how pipelines should be created. So the new pipeline view in Codefresh is exactly this thing. You open a project, like you open a project in your IDE. Then on the left, you have all the pipelines which are related to that project. That's the grouping of projects that happens in a pipeline. And you can click on any pipeline, and in the middle of the window, you can see the definition of the pipeline. And we will see multiple ways on how you can define your pipeline. The most simple one is just an inline editor. You can just edit the pipeline in place, click save, and then run it after you save it. And then on the right, you have additional properties that are related to this pipeline, like triggers and variables and things that are specific to this pipeline. So enough about talk. Let's see again a demo. I'm going to an existing project where I've already created some pipelines. And you can see as I open the project, it works exactly in this manner. On the left, I have all my pipelines. At the moment, I have 5, and I can click on any of them, and I can change what I want to change in the pipeline. And depending on what the pipeline is doing, I get a different view. So this pipeline, as we've seen in another demo, is taking the pipeline definition from another repository, while this one is actually an inline one, and I can directly edit. And then on the right, I have all additional information, such as the triggers that are responsible for this pipeline, or I can define some variables that I want to use in my pipeline if I want custom variables.
So now let's talk about the new pipeline editor that you sort of saw in a sneak peek there. The goal of our inline editor is to make it very easy to get started, make it very easy to make changes, and make it very easy to get real-time reporting on things that work and things that don't work. So to that end, we've done a number of updates to this editor. to improve error handling. Also, the YAML formatting is a lot easier to keep track of. We have some tools so that now you can toggle and view the invisible characters, and there's a tendency within YAML to sometimes get lost with invisible characters, and so this makes that much easier to deal with. And it also has smarter suggestions, and so when you're actually writing a YAML, it will keep context and understand a little bit better what you're trying to do. I've actually found that this editor is probably the best YAML editor that I've used, and so even if I'm working on something like just Kubernetes YAML, sometimes I'll actually throw that into this editor because things are highly visible there, and it's a little bit easier to work with. Kostas, why don't you give us a little demo of that?
Yes, so as Dan said, if you have worked with YAML, you know that sometimes there are strange syntax errors, especially with the way tabs are handled or maybe spaces. So one of the most requested features our customers were asking is to finally be able to see the non-visible characters in your pipeline. So I'm now having a single button where I press it and I can see things like spaces, new lines, tabs, and everything that is non-visible. So it's very easy to locate a mistake on syntax errors. We also have a nice button where you can quickly take a step that you want to switch off and then just click on the comment area and it's instantly commented out. And then if you need it again, you click the button again and you put it in the pipeline. And the same thing is also available with a keyboard shortcut, which is Control/ or Command/ if you're on a Mac. So it works again just like an IDE. So if you know how to use an IDE, some of the things here will be familiar to you.
Now we do still recommend once you're done with that editing process to actually put that under version control, put it inside of your repo as you normally would, but it should be a lot easier this way.
And this is exactly the next point. This is one of the biggest, let's say, features that customers were asking apart from the editor. Before we did any changes, you could define your pipeline inline using the editor, then start playing around with it. And when you were certain about the pipeline, you could commit it to a repository and then take it from Git, because this is one of the best practices. Everything should be stored in Git so that you have auditing and you also know what changes happen. Now, previously, Codefresh only allowed you to use a pipeline definition from the same repository that you were checking out your source code. This was okay, but some teams wanted to split the way pipelines were stored. So you wanted to have your source code in one repository, but your pipeline in another repository. And we had this option, but with the limitation that you had to use a public repository for your pipeline, which for some companies, of course, this is not ideal because you have private pipelines and you don't want the whole internet to know them. So finally, you're able to take your pipeline definition from a completely different private Git repository. So you can have your pipeline in one private Git repository and then your source code in another private Git repository. And during runtime, connect the two together. So have the pipeline from one repository, compile the code or package the code in another repository. So this is how it looks like. If you choose this mode, the inline editor disappears, and now you get a completely new UI where first you can select which repository you are going to use for your pipeline definition. You're also going to get a preview, and you're also going to see the exact branches contained in there. So you have a lot of flexibility because you can check one branch for your source code and then a completely different branch for your pipeline definition. So we can see a demo on this. So here, I have this example where this is a normal pipeline, but I have clicked here and I'm saying I'm not going to use the inline YAML editor. I'm going to use the use YAML for repository option. And here you can see that even though this pipeline is actually working on a repository called Allure Docs, and this is what is going to be checked out and used for packaging, I'm actually going to define my pipeline from a completely unrelated repository. So this is another repository, which is called Pipeline Collection, and it contains my pipelines. So I'm connecting two repositories together. And then here I'm looking at the preview of the pipeline, and I can choose also which branch will be used. So there are two options here. I can actually say, yes, I'm going to use this develop branch no matter what. And if I run this pipeline, the pipeline definition will always be fetched from the develop branch, regardless of the branch that is used for compilation. Or there is the other option where I'm saying, I'm going to use the dynamic option, where here, depending on the trigger, it will use the pipeline that comes from the branch. So here I'm going actually to run it, and then we are going to see it. I have this repository which contains a pipeline definition, and I have two branches. One is called master, one is called develop, and both of them have a Codefresh YAML, but they are different. So here I have a simple step where it says I'm running in develop because this is the develop branch. But if we go to master, this is saying I'm running in master because it's in the master branch. So I'm going to run this pipeline twice. So here I'm going to run it, and I'm going to say choose the master branch. And then once it runs, I'm going to run it again, but this time I'm going to choose the develop branch. So it's the same pipeline, but I'm just giving a different option on which pipeline definition will be used. The source code is always the same. So I'm running it. And now you can actually see the difference because this one has 3 steps while the other one had just 1 step. So here are my builds, and these are the 2 pipelines, the exact same pipeline, but with different branches. This was the one that was triggered from the master branch. You can also see it here, and it says I'm running in master. But if I go to the other one, it has a different pipeline that starts with develop. And if I leave it some time, here you will see that the messages I'm running from develop. So this is how you can decide in a dynamic manner which pipeline definition you want to use according to the branch that contains the pipeline definition, which is unrelated to the branch that you are checking for the source code and for the application. So you can mix and match completely different scenarios between the repository that is being compiled and the repository that is offering the pipeline definition.
Now, before we move on, just a note on that. This idea of defining a pipeline once and using it in lots of different repositories, different projects, it's one of the things that we really wanted to do in Codefresh because it simplifies so much of the work that goes into pipeline creation. And when we actually set out to build Codefresh, we said, okay, well, there's this trend towards microservices. And what that means is that we have to have pipelines to support all these microservices. Well, how do we do that in a scalable way? The container-based pipelines was really the first step of that. Now being able to use a single pipeline from any location for all these different applications, that helps you standardize your DevOps workflow, and it's going to help increase the speed of your software delivery. And we've already seen a number of our customers using this kind of method where they're able to work much more efficiently. They can have 50 different microservices that are all powered by the same pipeline, but now that context is so much easier to get. So another feature that's related to this and really the pipeline creation process is the ability to disable triggers. Previously in Codefresh, we found that people wanted to be able to basically pause a trigger while they were working on changes. They wanted to be, maybe rebuilding the pipeline, or they wanted to do this or that, and they didn't want those triggers to be running all the time. And previously, the way that they could deal with that was to basically delete the trigger or be really fast with their cancel command in the pipeline view. So they could stop those pipelines from running when the trigger hit. So this was a highly requested feature. We've added a toggle into the platform. So now when you're looking at triggers, you can actually just enable and disable them right from the Codefresh UI. Now this doesn't get rid of the trigger from your repository. Instead, what it does is it tells Codefresh this trigger is currently to be ignored. When you flip it back on, it will start executing in Costas. I think you have a quick demo for that as well.
Yes, so I have a very quick demo. I'll go back to projects. So here I have a trigger, and I can just open my options, and this is a toggle, and I can just click it, and instantly it is disabled. So now I can do whatever I want with this pipeline, and then I can decide again that I want it, and I just click it, and it's enabled. So very easy. It works for multiple triggers as well. So we also know that there are people that are working with Codefresh pipelines for a long time. So they are already using the previous workflow, which was with repositories. As I said, both repositories and projects will be visible in your account if you're an existing Codefresh customer. And these are some important points that you need to know if you have already lots of pipelines with projects, and you need to know what will happen now that you have projects as well. So first of all, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page with this, both views are available at the same time. Nothing is lost in your account, nothing is gone somewhere else or in another screen. So if for the time being you want to ignore, let's say, projects, and you still want to do things like the old way, you can. Of course, we are going to deprecate repositories after some time, but all of the information is still there. So don't worry about missing information. The new thing is that already behind the scenes, we have done the migration for you. So everything that was a repository before in Codefresh is now a project. And you will see all your existing repositories in the same manner in the projects view. And the underlying information between these two views is exactly the same. So if you do a change in repositories, you will also see in a pipeline in projects as well. So feel free to change things from one view and go to the other. Naturally, all the new features, for example, the highly requested one for selecting a pipeline definition from another private repository, is only available in the project view. So if you want to use the new features, you have to use the project view. All the new features are there, and all the existing functionality that was in the repository view is completely unchanged. You also need to know that all the existing pipelines will work as before. Nothing is going to change for them, so there is no need to do anything with the existing pipelines. But if you create a brand new pipeline in the projects view, it will only be visible there. We are not going to migrate, let's say, back things from the new way to the old way. So all existing pipelines will be in both places, but any new pipelines you're creating in the project view will only appear in the project view. So let's say natural migration path is to start creating the new pipelines in the project view and gradually move whatever you want to need. There is no rush to migrate anything, as the repository view will still work. I hope this is clear, that this doesn't force you a migration period. You are free to migrate whenever you want, and take your time. In the most extreme scenario, you could just ignore the project's view and just keep working with repositories, of course knowing that you will not get access to all the new features. So just a quick demo. Again, this is very quick. This is the old view. So all my repositories are here, nothing has changed, all my pipelines are here, I can still work with them. It's not like a read-only view, it's just a read-write view where you can change anything, and all the projects that you are seeing here are automatic, or the repositories that you are seeing here are automatically migrated to project. So you can see some of the names. Maybe I look at, let's say, CF Terminal or Allure Java. If I go to the project view, again, all the projects are here. So there is nothing that you need to for the migration. If you want to use a brand new feature right away, your old repository is already there as a project. You can click on it and you will get the new pipeline view with all your pipelines on all the project. There is a small warning about the git clone step, which is the next point that we're going to talk about it. But other than that, everything should be exactly the same. So here is my pipeline as it was in the repository view, and here is another pipeline as it was in the repository view. And now I can also use all the new features for the editor and the pipelines. So don't be afraid that something is missing. Everything is there, and it's actually in two places.
So one of the things that we found as we started this process of having pipelines that operated in both the context of a repository and also pipelines that didn't operate within the context of a repository is that users were often confused by what git clone was happening and if it was happening, because those things were actually built right into when you added a repository to Codefresh. We found that was sort of confusing, and it also didn't give people the flexibility they wanted to work with. And so what we've done now is basically taking out the default git clone step. When you go to create a pipeline, you will see a templated view of this, but now you do need to explicitly put the clone step into the repository. Now, all of your old repositories that you've already added that have a git clone step built in, they will continue to function exactly as you expect. No changes required there, but as you do new pipelines, you will need to add clone steps to those in order for them to function. This clone step is very straightforward. It's in our steps.codefresh.io. It's on the homepage. You can actually see it on there. An example. This is the code for it. It's basically give it a name, set up a title, and those can be changed, and then just put type git clone. Now here where we have the repo, you can see that we've actually passed in some variables. These variables in this step will actually take the context of a git trigger. So if you have a single pipeline that has lots of different git triggers from lots of different contexts, lots of different repos, they will actually all come with their context, and it will clone that repo when the trigger runs. But you could also explicitly set this by name, and so that no matter what trigger is running, it will always clone the same. Of course, you can have multiple clone steps in a repository, so you can actually work off of bring multiple different code bases together if you need to. Let's do a quick demo of that.
So here I have actually two demos. So the most, let's say, easy way to use the clone step, if you don't want to do anything fancy and you just want to work the old way, you just say statically which repository you want to check out. So this is a very simple pipeline which says, as a first step, I'm going to clone this repository no matter what, and this revision. So here you can see I have already two triggers which are completely unrelated. So this trigger is for a Nest.js project. This is from another project. But the code that is actually going to be checked out is this project, the Allure docs. So if I run this pipeline and I'm going to do it, I'm being asked which trigger I'm going to simulate. So what I'm going to do with the launch. But in this case, it doesn't really matter. The trigger is not that important because this pipeline says that it's going to clone the Allure doc step. So if you want something simple and you don't really care about having all the flexibility of using different Git triggers and getting their context in the pipeline, the easiest thing you can do is just create a Git clone step where it's specific and says exactly which repository you want. But if you want to use the new advantages of Codefresh pipelines, you can use the Git clone step as Dan said, where this pipeline essentially says, please check out the repository that is mentioned from the trigger. So here, this pipeline is not defining a specific repository, but depending on the trigger, a git checkout will happen that will work with the appropriate repository. So here I have two different triggers, and when I run this pipeline, essentially what I'm choosing is which trigger I'm to simulate. So here, if I select this repository, it will check out the Allure docs project on the master branch. Of course, if I can check the branch, it will check out this branch. And if I use the other trigger, it will also use that repository. So you have a lot of flexibility here because you can define a generic pipeline, which is the classic thing that happens if you have multiple microservices. So maybe you have an application that has 5 microservices and all of them are compiled in exactly the same manner. They are packaged in the same manner. And they are all deployed in the same manner. So previously you had to do something fancy and try to reuse a pipeline and find some common segments of pipelines that you wanted to reuse. But with this new capability, it's very simple. You just define your pipeline once, and then you just add 5 triggers for the 5 microservices that are going to use this pipeline. And then automatically, without any special configuration, depending on the trigger that launched this pipeline, that specific microservice will be compiled and used. So this is great if you are a company that has a lot of applications that are packaged in a similar manner, and you have been trying to find ways of reusing pipelines. You don't need to reuse pipelines anymore. You can simply define pipelines once and then decide on which project it's going to be used.
So, and to bring all of this into a summary here, the whole goal of all of these items is to make it a lot easier to pick up, use Codefresh, and also make pipelines more scalable. And as I mentioned at the very top of the hour, when we've tested this with users, we've actually seen a huge impact on how quickly they can build pipelines and how quickly they get up and running. And we've seen a massive impact in how successful they are when they're doing that. So this is part of an ongoing user testing that we're always doing. We're a CI/CD company, right? How often should we be releasing changes? All the time, right? We dog food Codefresh. We use Codefresh to build Codefresh. We actually have a demo of Codefresh where you can actually look at Codefresh on top of Codefresh. It's a real yo-dog kind of way of building our product. These things that we've done here today to bring everything under the context of a project, and then have all the permissions, all the pipelines, all of these things actually operate within that context should make your lives a lot easier as engineering teams to be able to build and use these pipelines. The better editor, the more IDE-like experience, and the idea of being able to use a single pipeline once across lots of projects, it actually helps us support all the different patterns that we see from development organizations. And we do see people doing mono repos. So we have great support for that already, but we see people using separate configuration repos from their application repos. This is a great, this improvement today actually supports that really well. And of course, we do see people doing the traditional one application per repository with all the configuration built in. That works too, but you can still use that pipeline over and over again across lots of different repositories. So all of this context is meant to make life a lot easier. If you do have any questions, feel free to use that Q&A button down at the bottom of the screen, and we'll answer those. And if you haven't tried Codefresh already, go create a free account. You can actually start using these features we've talked about. They're all in the platform today. So you can actually get access to it right now. You do get 120 builds a month free. We are going to take a couple of questions. Looks like we just have a few. And in the meantime, feel free to go to codefresh.io/events to check out our other upcoming webinars, our other upcoming events. We'd love to see you. If you're in Austin this week, we'd love to see you at DevOps Days Austin. We're going to be in Barcelona for KubeCon. So with that, let's take a couple of questions. Branson asks, is there a place to check the migration for an existing customer, or will all migrations be done by a certain day or time? Kostas, do you know how that is going to work for them?
So all new customers that are creating accounts right now are instantly going to use the new projects view. For existing customers, I think most of them are being migrated today with some exceptions. If you don't see the new project view in your account, please contact us and we can enable it for you. That's very easy to do.
And then we also have a question from Paul asking, are these updates available on enterprise on-premise version?
Yes, they are, and several enterprise customers have already been upgraded. Some of them said that for various reasons they are not ready to the migration yet, and this is going to happen later in the week, but they are available in all Codefresh installations.
Now, I believe the way that the Codefresh model works for enterprise, typically updates are made available right away in most cases, and so they should be smoothly available in that way. Let's see, I don't see any more questions, so I think we covered them. Kostas, any last things that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think the most important topic for me is the last one. The new projects view is very flexible in how you create your workflow, but you need to spend some time to understand all your capabilities. So don't just look in the project view, say, okay, this doesn't work like I'm used to work, and instantly dismiss it. Try to think how you can use the new projects. You don't have to change your old ones. Because I think in the long run, it's much better, especially if you're working on microservices and you have the well-known problem where you have a pipeline that is similar for many applications.
Yeah, perfect. And if you do have feedback, we'd love to have it. Hit us up on Twitter at Codefresh, or just contact us through the website. Of course, there's always that intercom chat with no bots in it that you're welcome to throw any feedback at, and we'll collect that. With that, I would say good luck, happy pipelining, if that's a verb we're using now, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.